The views and opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect those of Access Fort Wayne, the Allen County Public Library, or any other supporting groups. If you'd like to produce a show, call us at 260-421-1250.
Let me be your lighthouse so I can show you the way. Let me be your shining light, I'll keep you from drifting away. I'm the one that makes you try when...
Hello, this is Patty Hunter, Patty's Page. Today we are at the seminary library downtown in Fort Wayne, Indiana. To my left is Dr. William Lile. Hello.
Hey Patty, how are you?
Welcome.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Oh, we have good questions for you. You came here to Fort Wayne for what reason?
At your request, I am here speaking at many of the schools, seminaries, pro-life groups, and churches to explain how we treat the preborn as patients in our practice in Florida. And if the preborn are patients, they are persons, and if they are persons, they deserve our protection, and to educate about the life within the womb, but also to talk about abortion. And is abortion a sin? Yes. But also to talk about the forgiveness of that sin, because ladies and men can't have healing until they've had true forgiveness, and true forgiveness comes through the blood of Christ.
That's the only way I know. So, your family, are they also pro-life?
Yes, my wife has worked for years at one of our pregnancy centers. My kids often will come with me on talks like this around the country. They've been involved, and so are my parents.
So, how old were you when you started to think about becoming a doctor?
Oh, probably when I was a kid. I was in the hospital several times as a kid with different surgeries and plastic surgery and corrective surgery, and so I got comfortable being around hospitals and doctors and nurses, and just had a lot of admiration and respect from the people that were providing my care as a kid, and it just developed an interest that carried through until now.
So where did you learn to become a doctor? I mean, what did you start off as?
I started off studying biology and chemistry at Rutgers University, and I did graduate work in molecular biology at Rutgers University, and then went to medical school in New Jersey, and my residency was in obstetrics and gynecology at the University of Florida, and then I've been in private practice since 1999.
So how long have you been a doctor? Since 1999, let me think, that's 19 years.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
So it'll be 20 years in July of 2019.
Mazel tov.
Thank you.
How long have you been saving preborns and newborns?
My ministry really started in 1999 when I finished my residency. The practice that I took over was the largest provider of abortion services in our Tri-County area. So we took over the practice. We had the former physician sign a restrictive covenant to non-compete, whereby he couldn't practice any kind of medicine for the next 2 years. Mm-hmm. And that kind of ushered him into early retirement. And then when we took over the practice, not only did we stop all abortions on day one, we stopped all referrals for abortions on day one. And I now use all of the abortion machine and the tools that were in the abortion clinic to really educate people as far as how we treat the preborn as patients using the tools of modern obstetrics, ultrasound, fetoscopy, MRI, to show that life, but then without showing any blood or baby parts, to show how a first trimester abortion is actually done with the actual instruments, how a second trimester abortion is done, how a partial birth abortion is actually done with the instruments that did them.
Tell me about the the law part of abortion. You cannot do a partial birth abortion when they're still alive when they take them out that way.
Well, the way the law was written, and there are several states that have laws that ban partial birth abortion. Partial birth abortion is when the feet would be delivered, the belly would be delivered, the chest would be delivered, the arms would be delivered, but then while the baby's head is still on the inside, then the baby's life is taken. Well, partial birth abortion is just a procedure, and the laws were talking about that particular procedure. It would be like having a law saying it's illegal to kill somebody with a revolver. Well, what if they want to kill them with the shotgun? Well, this law doesn't cover that. So it wasn't about protecting the life of the baby, it was banning a particular procedure. My governing body, ACOG, which is American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, said in their practice bulletin that yes, this law says that you cannot perform a partial birth abortion if the baby still has a heartbeat, if it's still alive. But then in that same practice bulletin, they then recommended 3 ways to first take the life of the baby. Either cut the umbilical cord, inject the baby with a medicine called digoxin, or inject the baby with a medicine called potassium chloride, which is one of the components of lethal injection for execution. So what they said was you can't perform this procedure if the baby is still alive. Therefore, these are the 3 ways that we recommend taking the life of the baby first, and then you can perform the procedure.
That doesn't make any sense.
Well, the law was poorly crafted. It just said a particular procedure. It didn't say it is illegal to take the life of the baby. It just said you can't do this procedure if the baby still has a heartbeat. So they countered with, okay, we'll take stop the heartbeat first with a different procedure, and then they can do the procedure they want legally.
My late aunt was an abortionist in Toronto, Ontario. She did it in the 60s and 70s. She was the first OB-GYN doctor, lady doctor, at Women's College Hospital. And when I found out what she was doing, I went pro-life.
Yeah.
Really? I couldn't understand why.
Well, it's amazing that somebody will, like I spent 4 years in college, 4 years in medical school, a year in internship, and then 4 years in residency, 13 years after high school, to help sick moms and sick babies so we get good outcomes. I couldn't imagine doing all that same training, and then after you learned how to protect those lives, to then take those lives.
There's no logic in there. There's like a craziness, an evil.
Well, I think that the real basis is that when you're trying to figure out what's really going on, this is not a choice as far as left or right, vanilla or chocolate. This is a spiritual battle. And when it's a spiritual battle, you have to fight that battle with spiritual tools, and you have to know the scriptures, and you have to realize that I'm not just fighting a choice, I'm really fighting evil forces that are taking the lives of these preborn.
Yes. Chemical abortion. What is that?
Chemical abortion, between 10, maybe 20% of abortions in the United States are not performed surgically. They're being performed with medications, chemicals. The most common way is with a medicine called RU486. The body, when it is pregnant, produces a hormone called progesterone, which says, we're pregnant, progesterone, progestation, let's keep the pregnancy going. The medicine RU46 blocks that signal. So a woman's body says, yay, we're pregnant. Then they get the RU46 and they're like, I thought we were pregnant. Well, that's how about 10 to 20% of the abortions are being done. There's a second medication which is now becoming more popular, and that is methotrexate. Methotrexate is actually a chemotherapy. Chemotherapy attacks cancer. Chemotherapy attacks rapidly dividing cells. Well, a baby that's growing and developing is a rapidly dividing, amazing cluster of cells. So when chemotherapy attacks a pregnancy, it'll take the life of the baby. And then a second medication is given to cause the uterus to contract to push the baby out.
Have you met people who have had abortions?
Sure. I have a lot of patients who've had abortions. I have a lot of patients who have had complications from abortions, and there also are all sorts of emotional issues where there was a baby there on the inside.
Well, they know.
I mean, the ladies will know when that baby would have been born, and even if it was 5 years ago or 10 years ago, they'll still get introduced to a 10-year-old, and then they'll think, wow, that's the age that pregnancy, that baby would have been now. And you can't help but wonder, what would that child have been like? So we deal with, a lot of patients who have a lot of emotional issues. A lot of times a previous abortion will affect their relationships. Sometimes they suffer through it alone. Their partner, their family might not have even known. And a lot of times they don't even want to bring it up in church. And the role of the church is to share the gospel, but there's a lot of healing that can take place in a church.
You can be forgiven.
And true healing only happens with true forgiveness, and true forgiveness only happens through Jesus Christ. So the church needs to recognize that just because you're a church doesn't mean that none of the men or the women have been involved in an abortion. Mm-hmm. And there are grandparents whose children have been involved in abortion, and it affects all levels of the family. And nobody likes to discuss it. Nobody needs to stand up in church and say, my name is Betty and I had an abortion. They're afraid. They feel guilty.
They don't vote.
So they don't have to stand up in public and announce it. But it is very important that, number one, they hear that abortion is a sin from the pulpit. Mm-hmm. But in addition to that yes, it is a sin, but the blood of Jesus can forgive any sin, including the sin of abortion. And if we're not discussing that history and that guilt just will sit there for sometimes decades.
There won't be any closure, no closure. No. And then they wonder why.
My pastor has a saying that God doesn't expect perfection in our lives and doesn't expect perfection in our Christian walk. But where we don't have perfection, we need to have a new direction. We need to recognize sin for what it is. It's kind of like when Jesus said, repent and sin no more. Mm-hmm. So when we recognize the things of our past, they are in our past. We come to God, we ask for forgiveness, we recognize it was a sin, repent and move on, change our direction. That's what He really wants in our lives.
Do you meet a lot of people or know of a lot of people who have abortions that are not Christ-based?
Sure. A lot of patients have really been told that this is not a life on the inside, and it is just purely a choice, and that it's not a life until it's physically on the outside.
Well, it doesn't make any sense. I'm trying to grasp that, if it's not a human inside and it becomes a human outside when it's born, where's the logic?
Well, there's actually a procedure. This is interesting. There's a procedure called a Zavanelli maneuver. And the law will say that it is not a person until it takes its first breath. And then once it takes its first breath, then it's now a person. That was the issue with partial birth abortion. Well, number one, we're treating the preborn with surgeries. We're doing heart surgery, removing tumors, doing bladder surgery. We're giving blood transfusions. But there's a procedure called a Zavanelli maneuver. This is a maneuver where a mom is in labor and she's pushing the baby out. The baby's head comes out.
Right.
And just like any normal delivery, even with just the head out, babies can breathe and babies can cry. Right. But sometimes that head gets stuck.
Whoops.
And we try different things to get the baby to deliver safely. Yeah. We rotate it, we turn it, we put pressure here, pressure there. But if none of that works, we do what's called a Zavanelli maneuver, where we actually will take the head, push it back up on the inside, and then do an emergency C-section.
Oh, C-section.
So when we do that, once we put that baby back in the womb, was that baby not a person and then became a person when it took its breath and then loses its personhood when I put it back on the inside? None of that makes sense.
No. No, I really. Conception. Life starts at conception.
Absolutely.
And what proof is there?
Sure, a couple things. Genetically, we know that your chromosomes right now are the same as the chromosomes from the moment of your conception. My chromosomes are the same that they were at the moment of my conception.
Right.
I didn't start until an egg from my mom and one sperm from my dad got together. These were two cells, one from mom, one from dad. Once they came together at that moment of conception, that cell is different from my mom's, it is different from my dad's, and it's the same as the cells, the 60 trillion cells that I have in my body now are genetically identical. They didn't become unique at 20 weeks during the pregnancy. All those cells did not become unique at the moment of delivery. All of those cells and all the blueprint, all the DNA and all the genes were unique from that moment of conception. And that's the miracle of life.
So, at your lectures, how often do you go touring? Do you go just United States or anywhere else?
I've been to Israel, done talks over there, but mostly here in the United States.
Would you go to Canada?
I would go to Canada.
Oh,
I love Canada. I'm on the road probably out of state, traveling, doing talks about 25 to 30 times a year, which doesn't sound like a lot, but I still have my private practice where I'm delivering 25
so
babies a month.
So you work during the week and go on the weekend?
Try to,
Like
and sometimes during the week, but you know, I have my profession, which is my private practice, delivering babies, taking care of moms, performing surgery,
right.
And then I have my passion. My passion is really using the knowledge and training that I have to defend the preborn, to educate people about that life within the womb.
So it's a matter of life and death, really.
It really is.
So why teach the young or the college university students?
That's the future.
The future.
I mean, these are the kids, this is the generation that can make the real changes and reverse the current policies, reverse the current laws. This generation, we grew up reading books. This generation has grown up with smartphones and tablets and computers.
Technology.
They can see videos, and that is the reality. They are starting to see the things that we routinely do in the office and in different centers around the country where we treat the preborn as patients. Children's Hospital of Philadelphia actually does about 150 to 200 surgeries on babies each year that are not only outside, but babies that are still on the inside. Mm-hmm. Thousands of procedures. They are removing tumors. They are doing heart surgery. They're actually dilating restrictive valves in the heart.
Oh, right.
They're doing blood transfusions to the babies while they're in the inside. They are putting stents in bladders to allow the urine to drain out.
Right, yeah.
So these aren't just cool things to do and cool procedures to do on the baby while it's on the inside. These are life-saving procedures. In a lot of these cases, if the surgical interventions were not done while the baby was on the inside, then baby would often die shortly after the delivery of the baby. So we're treating the preborn as patients,
yeah.
And if they're a patient, they're a person. And according to the 14th Amendment, if they're a person, they deserve our protection, they have rights.
What about miscarriages compared to abortion?
Well, miscarriage is something natural that happens. It's not, you know, when it comes to miscarriage, yes, there was a pregnancy. My wife and I had 4 miscarriages. We have 2 perfectly normal, you know, daughters, but we had miscarriage, and a daughter, then a miscarriage, and then a daughter, and then a 4th miscarriage. And nothing that we did to cause it, nothing that we did to prevent it. I mean, as soon as sin came into the world, bad things happened. And, you know, the difference between a miscarriage and an abortion is that a miscarriage was just something that happened, and why, who knows. But it wasn't an act or a decision that was done by us. We didn't want any of those miscarriages. You know, we would see a heart beating on a baby on the ultrasound, and I was in my residency, and it's like, wow, we're having a baby. And then my wife would start to have spotting, cramping, and then we'd do another ultrasound, and that heartbeat would be gone. Why? We don't know. But there was nothing we could have done to prevent that from happening, but then there's nothing that we could have done to, that we did that caused that to happen. So that's a real difference. It's kind of like, when somebody dies of a heart attack, well, it's not because somebody murdered them.
No,
it was something that
was
happened. Now, somebody stops somebody's heart, well, that's different. So this, miscarriage is just something that, but you still have that sense of loss. Whether, it was one of our miscarriages. I deal with patients who are dealing with miscarriages every week. And they know they're pregnant. They can see the heart beating, then maybe a week later, the heart's not beating. Well, they might have a miscarriage and pass the pregnancy on their own, or they might have to have a surgery. But they still have that sense of loss.
We get closure.
When you see the baby, you measure the baby,
Right.
you can see how far along the baby is. You also know what the due date is.
Mm-hmm.
And you start making plans in your head. I'm having a baby in April. And then all of a sudden, that pregnancy stops. And even after you've had the miscarriage, people say, oh, I heard you lost the baby. So casually.
Yeah.
But that's okay, you can get pregnant again.
Oh, I heard that.
It's a real sense of loss. And it hurts.
You have to mourn.
There is. There's
Grieving.
Yep. You had a baby, you saw the heart beating, there was life, when that baby was due, and then for whatever reason, that life stops.
God took her or him back home.
Yep.
What about fallopian tube pregnancy?
Sure. It's called an ectopic pregnancy. An ectopic pregnancy can happen anywhere outside of the uterus. An ectopic pregnancy could happen on an ovary. An ectopic pregnancy can happen on the tube. An ectopic pregnancy can actually occur at the very, very bottom part of the uterus in the cervix. And it can even be what's called a corneal pregnancy, where in that area, this is the wall of the uterus, and you have the tube that is entering into the wall of the uterus.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this is all outside of the uterus, and this is all inside the uterus. Well, sometimes that pregnancy will happen right there in the wall.
Get stuck there.
And our technology does not enable us to take a pregnancy from an area which could cause the mom to either get sick or to even die. Our technology does not enable us to take it from one area and transplant it into the other area.
I wish we could do that now.
I wish we could too. And I don't see that happening anytime in the near future. But in that case, we are going to lose the life of the baby either way.
Mm.
And if we don't do something, we could lose the life of the baby and the mom. And so when we look at any kind of Judeo-Christian ethic and we look at right and wrong, if we have the potential to lose both versus just losing one, then as difficult of a decision as it is, then there's no other option. It's rare, doesn't happen real frequently.
They make up this excuse, the baby is going to kill the mother, and harming the mother. There's nothing wrong with the baby, and there's nothing wrong with the mother. They're just making up that excuse to do abortion.
Well, there are reasons where we, when it's not an ectopic or tubal pregnancy, there are reasons that we need to deliver the baby soon.
Yes.
Preeclampsia, toxemia, mom is getting horribly sick. But when the cure is delivering the baby early, that doesn't mean you have to take the life of the baby in order to deliver the baby early. We have NICUs, neonatal intensive care units, so sometimes we have to induce labor or even do a C-section to help mom, and then we send that baby to our NICU, and they do amazing work there. And the goal is to have a healthy baby. Do all the babies in a NICU survive, even the really extremely preterm ones? No.
Oh.
But it doesn't benefit the mom at all to take the life of the baby.
No, it doesn't benefit the baby either.
No, the baby, when they talk about how safe is abortion, well,
There's no
it's
safe.
lethal for the mom, for the baby.
For the baby. They say equal rights, women's rights and all that. Whatever happened to the baby girls that are in the womb? Don't they get equal rights? And the same with boys. What would you like to say to my audience to share with them why you are doing what you're doing to help the moms and dads?
Well, it's my peers that are taking the lives of these babies. I mean, I spent 12 years of my life training, and now I've spent 19 years of my life trying to have healthy moms and healthy babies. When you look at the miracle of life, you look at, it doesn't matter if it's embryology or genetics or fetal development. Just basic science says this is a new person on the inside from that moment of conception. And if it's a person, it's a patient.
Right.
And if it's a patient, it's a person and deserves our protection. And it's not just the attitude of personhood, which we are talking about with the preborn. Personhood affects the other end of the age spectrum.
Yes.
You'll see in Europe where they will actually say, grandma has Alzheimer's disease, grandma has Parkinson's disease. She's not the person that she used to be. In some countries, you don't even need to have permission. They can actually euthanize, and they can take the life of grandma because they deem her to no longer be a person, no longer to have value. So personhood is from conception until the time of natural death.
That's right.
And that's where we need to protect them.
I would love to have you back on my show. Whether
Happy
it's
to.
by Skype or I'll come back here. So thank you,
You're welcome, Miss
Dr. Lile.
Patty. My pleasure.
Oh, we got a good group.
I'm sorry.
Thank you for coming on to my show. We'll see you next week, and God bless. This is Patty Hunter or Patty's Page.
Godspeed, my love, until we meet again. You're always in my heart and every dream. Don't let this time apart give in to all our fears. God will keep us close from up above. So until we meet again, Godspeed, my love. God is with us always, for the rest of our lives.